Welcome back to our third annual 2026 Winter Virtual Club Development Series. I'm Jocelyn Poirier, Manager of Rugby Development at Rugby Ontario. I use she, her pronouns. And before we get into tonight's session, just a quick reminder for those joining, keep your microphones muted while you're listening, and you can use the chat for questions and comments. You may also have some opportunity to unmute and ask questions as well, so stay tuned for that. And we'll have time at the end of the presentation to come back to anything that we've missed, or we'll have questions throughout as well. So put anything in the chat that you need. We also encourage you to leave your cameras on so that we know who we're talking to, but just note that we are recording this session and it will be shared. All right. I'm coming to you from Gananoque, Ontario tonight, the traditional territory of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, land covered by the Crawford Purchase of 1783. Rugby Ontario's member clubs and all of you are situated on traditional Indigenous territories across the province or perhaps beyond. I invite all of us to pause and reflect on our privilege to work, learn, play, and move freely on these lands. And just appreciate the role that sport has played in our lives. Let's share gratitude to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have been and continue to be caretakers of these lands, for whom Indigenous sport and physical activity have long been associated with positive experiences of celebration, community, and leadership building, but who've also had the very harmful experiences of sport being used as a tool for colonization. If you'd like to acknowledge the lands that you are on, please feel free to do so in the chat now. All right, this year we are continuing a section that we added last year to the series called Club Share and Tell. At the end of each of the sessions will feature a club stakeholder sharing about a unique initiative, lesson learned, or a best practice within their club or role. The goal is just to provide a platform for club sharing and help build our community and grow all of our clubs. Unfortunately, tonight we weren't able to fill this segment. We didn't get any takers, so we will have an extended question and answer instead. We're still looking to fill this segment in a few other sessions. So if you're interested, if you think that might be something that you're willing to do, or you have a recommendation of someone who would be a good fit for that, please reach out to me. And we look forward to hearing from some other clubs in our future sessions. And if you're listening to this on a recording long after the fact, that offer still stands as we plan to continue this into the future. So please reach out. All right. To get into the main part of our presentation tonight, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Corliss Bean with us. Dr. Bean is an associate professor in the Department of Recreation and Leisure Studies at Brock University. Her research focuses on using sport as a vehicle to foster physical and psychosocial development in youth. And she works with community organizations to develop, implement, and evaluate relevant programming or initiatives. Corliss is also the director of the Center for Healthy Youth Development through Sport at Brock University. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Corliss. Take it away.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jocelyn. Yeah, thanks for having me here tonight. Really excited about the opportunity to do this. I live and breathe evaluation, and the nerdy part of me really, really does enjoy it. So anytime I get an opportunity to talk with any sort of sport programmer, I love sharing that. Oftentimes because I think evaluation is seen as a scary word and people shy away from it because people don't love it or don't know what it means or don't have the skill set to do it. So hopefully today the goal of my session tonight is just to make evaluation seem a little less scary, a little bit more fun, and hopefully there's one key takeaway here that you can take away and be able to apply and give some thought around as well. So as Jocelyn mentioned, I'm at Brock University within the Recreation and Leisure Department, and I really have three kind of areas of expertise. Obviously focusing on youth, particularly youth sport, and using sport as a vehicle for life skill development. So not just developing skills around technical, tactical, physical elements, but using sport as that vehicle as well. And then with that, oftentimes working with community organizations to develop those types of programming, but also to evaluate them as well. and a lot of different roles, and a lot of really great connections here that I'll loop back to a little bit later in terms of resources. But if you're not familiar with YouthRex, I sit on their board there, and their fabulous opportunity for open access resources, as well as the Canadian the Canadian Evaluation Society. So really, really great opportunity there. Um, so in terms of what tonight is going to look like, I take a community engaged approach to all the work that I do for research and evaluation. I recognize that everyone and every organization starts with different points when it comes to evaluation. And there's never a bad time to dive in and start with evaluation. Ideally, my goal again for tonight is to provide you with some tools and resources to navigate your own evaluation journey. And in terms of what this looks like, as Jocelyn mentioned, please feel free. I really want to encourage this as informal two-way communication. So if I'm halfway through a slide and you have a question, feel free to post in the chat, or raise your hand, unmute. I don't want to know. I know we're a fairly small group, so please feel free to chime in, and don't wait for me to just ask questions. But I will have a few opportunities for that throughout the session as well. So to guide tonight, really just diving into what evaluation is and why it's important, trying to unpack what is it that we actually want to learn when we undertake evaluation, and then look at, I know surveys are often a typical way that we collect data. So thinking about what are some things that we can do and questions we can ask with surveys, but then also thinking about, are there other ways, more creative ways that we can gather data, and then obviously wrapping up with a few key takeaways. So in terms of defining what evaluation is, it's really understanding how, why, and to what extent a program is achieving its intended outcomes. For me and my context, it's typically with the goal of developing or supporting athlete development, and probably within the context of Rugby Ontario, this is typically one of the outcomes that you might want to be looked at as well. So oftentimes throughout my talk tonight, because I do a lot of program evaluation, I'm going to use the word program. Evaluation can mean taking on this systematic approach to asking and answering questions, not only about a program, but it could also be about different initiatives. It could be about training. Maybe, for example, you just engaged in a new training for trauma-informed or youth development. It might be an event that happens within Rugby Ontario. It might be a new concussion protocol or rule or policy change, and you want to evaluate that. Or it might be something like your platform use, your social media, your website, and kind of tracking those sorts of pieces. So all of these things can be evaluated, and a lot of the things, really can focus on and translate across the different contexts. So just kind of keep them in mind as well. But essentially, as simple as it is, evaluation hopefully allows you to do what you're already doing, but a little bit better. So why do we actually evaluate? Oftentimes we want to be evaluating for the purposes of learning, so that we take this learning focus lens a little bit. Just talking about the importance of taking that learning focus lens. The goal ideally is to evaluate with the goal of improving programming, informing decision making, that you're ideally making these decisions to best meet the needs of the participants. That could be the coaches, the athletes, it might be at the admin level, but you're not just doing this to tick a box in terms of, oh, we have a funder, we have to report to the funder, we collect these surveys, we report, and we actually never do anything to adapt that learning focus lens. But we do know that that's often the case, and that's a requirement for a lot of pieces. So yes, let's do that, but then how else can we build off of what we're already doing? And I know strategic planning is something that often comes up at more the admin level, and this is something to think about. How can you actually plan if you don't really know where to start? So evaluation can help you with that and provide a direction for where you want to go with your strategic planning as well. One of the other things that I kind of thought of too, for a lot of provincial sport organizations, is thinking about applying for grants. And I know that's kind of the reality of a lot of the work that we do within sport. So engaging in this notion of evaluation helps you maybe become competitive or at least eligible to apply for grants, because you can share that, you know what, we have been engaging in evaluation. We can share some lessons learned from our program, some stats, some stories and things like that, which are very helpful. So maybe just pausing there, what I'd like to hear from you, and this can be I can quickly jump over it. I'd love to see in the chat, or it can also be on your video. Just show of hands using your fingers. Are you currently engaging in some form of evaluation within your role within Rugby Ontario? So 1 being yes, a lot, 5 being, or 4 being none at all. And if you don't really know, 5 is okay too. So if you can pop that in the chat, I'd love to see where people are at with that. Don, I'm seeing a lot. That's great. Would love to hear more about what you guys are doing in a minute. Sophie, number 2. Okay, so some, but could be doing a little bit more. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of 2s. So that's great. Great to hear that evaluation is on people's radar. And I do have a few questions later on, so I'm going to keep going, but I would love to hear what it is that you guys are looking at right now, and that will help me maybe tailor the conversation as well. Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing. Now, oftentimes, as I mentioned right from the outset, there's a lot of barriers to evaluation. Some of that is just plain fear, lack of capacity. We don't have the actual training or evaluation specific staff or skills or knowledge around evaluation. Sometimes it's lack of time, money, human resources to actually undertake evaluation. And I think when we apply for these grants now, it's becoming more and more common practice to have evaluation funding built in, which is nice, whether that's hiring an external evaluator or having it as a requirement to, okay, you have this pot of money, but part of that is to engage in some sort of evaluation. So again, but there's often this capacity gap here, and that's what I like to do, is try and come in, and when I work with community organizations, I never just act as an evaluation consultant and do the evaluation for them and leave. Like, I'm all about capacity building, and hopefully, again, would love to have any sort of side conversations around what that could look like, building, and hopefully this presentation in and of itself helps with that. But one of the stats that I always find is like so fascinating, and now this isn't sport specific, but it does look at that 94% of organizations in Ontario do evaluate their work in some way. However, there's only 14% of organizations that actually have a staff member that are responsible for evaluation work. So this means that most of us are doing this off the side of their desk, probably with no formal training, and it's kind of an afterthought, or, you know what, let's just get this done sort of thing. So hopefully we're kind of changing the landscape a little bit, prioritizing evaluation quite a bit, again, because we have that value around that learning focus lens, rather than just kind of a tick box there. So to make evaluation a feasible undertaking, it's important to really think about figuring out what that starting ground is and what's feasible for you or your organization to carry out in practice based on the resources that you have. So this is kind of thinking about, okay, what data do we already collect? Who and what resources do we use to collect that information? What's the quality of our information? Where, when, how do we actually collect that information? And then what is it that we're actually missing? So in terms of quality, thinking about, okay, we're doing surveys at the end of the season, but we're only getting a 10% response rate. Okay, so what does that mean? How can we tailor and adapt to maybe increase that response rate? So that's thinking about our evaluation capacity, and then switching the language a little bit, making some time to think about, okay, not just what's our evaluation capacity, but what's our evaluation potential. So thinking about what's our potential to carry out that evaluation in practice. So we think about our capacity as that starting point, but then what are some opportunities out there that we can continue to capitalize on? So what data could we collect? What resources could we use? And who are those resources? How can we actually improve the quality of our data? And where, when, and how could we continue to collect data? So I think this is really important. And again, I'll allude to a few examples here, but thinking about who and what resources we could use to collect data, something that I always recommend when I work with community organizations is go to your local college or university. If they don't have a recreation and leisure department, they might have a kinesiology or an education department. Almost all of those undergrad classes would have a a recreation or sorry, an evaluation course. And again, me teaching that course, we always partner with a community organization and help build evaluation capacity and work with a community organization. And that's the student's job is to, or an assignment throughout that is to have that connection and help carry out an evaluation for that community organization. So again, it's a learning focused lens. There's capacity building at the organizational side of things, but then you're also benefiting from the skill set that these students have in terms of maybe you guys already have surveys that have been collected and you don't really know how to analyze them. And that's where students can kind of jump in and help and provide those resources. Okay, so building off of our first question there, thinking about, okay, I'm seeing everybody that responded so far either gave me a 1 or a 2 in terms of how much they're engaging in evaluation. So either quite a bit or some, but could be doing more. So I'd love to hear from people, what kind of information are you currently collecting as part of either your role or programming, but what does that look like for you guys? And again, feel free to post in the chat. You can unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Loud and clear? Awesome. Yeah. One thing, I guess, so Oshawa Vikings, I'm just an athlete. In working with our new head coach for our senior men's program, something that we're collecting is a player profile that will guide us towards evaluation of the aspirations of each player on the team,
Okay.
what they're looking to achieve within the season, where do they see themselves on the team, and what they can do kind of to get the most, whether or not it's playing at the highest level possible or simply enjoying the club environment and contributing to that. So kind of getting a feel. It's almost like a preseason survey
Yeah,
that we're
that's
kind of
fabulous.
collecting that we'll use as a baseline as we go throughout the season. So just as
Yeah,
an example.
no, that's a great example. And again,
Hmm.
allows for that like tailoring of your athlete development plans, right? And when you work with them on goal setting throughout the season, you know what kind of goals that they should be setting or working with them based off of their interests. So that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I see a few other posts in the chat. So seeing fitness testing, some like 20-meter shuttle run, which is great. So again, something that could be done either at the beginning of the season as well, sometime midpoint potentially, and then at the end, and you're tracking to see if there's any sort of improvement throughout. Jason, thanks for sharing general programming at the end of the year. Could be doing more. But yeah, no, that's great. The fact that you're doing something is great as well. Dawn, thanks. Okay, so key performance indicators and skill development, game analysis, athlete retention, those are great. And is most of that through surveys? And then obviously like your retention and stuff like that is looking at kind of the back end data of registration rates and whatnot. And then Sophie, okay, senior student season, evaluate outcomes, add a team session. Okay, coaching sessions internally. Okay, that's great. So we're seeing a lot of really great things here. Amazing. And the fact that you guys can use the language of KPIs makes me very happy. That's great. And yeah, thanks again for sharing, and nice to see kind of that a lot of the physical pieces in terms of evaluation and benchmarking. Again, that benefits the student or sorry, the athletes in terms of even their own goal setting and things that they can work towards. At a mid-level, Leanne, seeing club-wide strategic planning is wonderful. And I won't touch on it tonight, but having a logic model, if you guys have one, is like super, super helpful when you are doing strategic planning, but also evaluation as well. So I'm happy to chat more about that later. But yeah, thanks for sharing all of that sort of great stuff. So again, I'm going to kind of shift back into the presentation, but thinking about how we actually what do we want to evaluate? And now that I'm hearing from you, that's a lot of great examples in terms of, I try to break it up into kind of program processes or program delivery. So is the program being delivered the way we want it to be? Whether that's like, do the staff feel like, hey, I have enough training to actually be able to run my programming the way that I want it? Are we reaching the people that we hoped we would? Program outcomes on the flip side of that's where we're getting into kind of more of the things that you're talking about in terms of strength and conditioning, physical assessments and improvements in that respect. Things like not enjoyment, are people coming back? Those sorts of things are really, really important as well. So when we think about rugby participation, when we kind of divide that up, it could be thinking about things like, were people attending consistently? Were they provided appropriate support? Offering challenging opportunities? Again, thinking about program quality, reaching that target population as we talked about. It might be something. So if I can give you any advice, I feel like we are very often jumping into the impact, the outcomes, because that's what funders want to see. They want to see that your program has changed the world. And that's how we get funding, is to show, you know what, this is amazing and we're doing amazing work. And I'm sure that all of you are. But oftentimes we want to make sure and hit pause on that piece, because if your program's not being delivered as planned, you're likely not reaching your intended outcomes, right? So you want to hit pause, and especially if it's like a new program or a new initiative, thinking about making sure that it's being delivered the way that you want, to who you want, at the level that you want in terms of quality, evaluating that piece first, and then making sure that the outcomes that you're getting at are being evaluated too. So what I'm suggesting is you don't have to ignore the outcomes, but making sure that we're assessing that program delivery or those program processes at the same time as well. And I saw a few comments there, Leanne, and a few others about strategic planning, which is amazing. So when we think about evaluation, it's often seen as this afterthought. So trying to recognize that we spend tons of time planning our programming, planning the season and what that's going to look like. If we can take a couple extra pieces of time to be able to plan for evaluation at the same time, so that it's not, okay, you know what, it's the end of the season, we should be getting that survey out that we always do, but thinking, okay, putting some thoughtful time into what do we actually want to ask this year? What do we want to learn about? And work that evaluation plan into the general planning process helps set you guys up for great success throughout the season as well. So hitting pause there just for a second, you've already shared a lot of great stuff about what you are currently doing. What I would love to ask is, what's one thing that you'd like to know more about? What's one thing that you're not evaluating that you maybe are thinking about and want to kind of dive into at some point in the next year or two? Feel free to post in the chat. And again, you can unmute if you'd like. Anybody have any thoughts?
One in the chat, yeah, around our research and sharing some more of that. So yes, we'd love to keep sharing that.
Okay. Learning from okay, awesome. Great, okay. Outcomes. Okay, so Sophie's talking about measuring outcomes, so creating measurable KPIs aside from those fitness and strength and conditioning pieces, and obviously, yeah, your outcomes in terms of records. Don, no problem. Gives you something to think about, right? And I think that's, I mean, my role as a researcher, I always say, like, our job is, we should never not have any more questions, right? We should always be, that's the fun part about doing research. And same thing with evaluation. You can always continue to learn more and ask questions. And if you don't know now, maybe for the next week, you'll think about it and you're out for a walk with your dog and you're like, you know what, I'd really like to think about that or learn more about that. And just kind of, again, thinking about that evaluative thinking is helpful. And it just lets you be more curious and ask again with that learning focus lens as well. Okay, Rob, seeing your comment about using college to support efforts. So I can give a quick example so we are currently, the course that I'm teaching is a program evaluation and recreation course. And in the past, we have had a full year course that each student is partnered. We have a very great experiential ed coordinator who has amazing partners in the community, and I leverage some of my partners as well, particularly within sport. And students go out either in a team of one or two, partner with an organization. If that organization is interested, we say, okay, let's see if this is a good fit. And they would work with them for a year. So from September until April, and they would help and support with whatever those evaluation needs are. And again, my role as the instructor is to make sure it's in alignment within the course guidelines and it's feasible and whatnot. But that's something that we've been doing. Our course now just got moved to a 1 semester, so a 4-month course instead. So right now we've actually partnered with Brock Recreation on campus and are working with them to evaluate some of their intramural programming. But honestly, taking a few minutes to connect with like a local college, university. And again, I think COVID has allowed us to be a lot more flexible and in the digital space, that it doesn't necessarily need to be Brock as an example, right next door, somebody in St. Catharines. There's a lot of great work. I mean, I've done a lot of evaluation work and I've literally never met somebody physically, face to face or been on site, that if you already have data that's been collected and you need help analyzing it, that can be something. So Rob, I'm not sure where you are, but I'm happy to touch base a little bit more, or even like brainstorm different colleges or universities that are close to you. But yeah, definitely something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so Rob sharing also coach evaluation, player experience. Leanne's mentioning planning for growth and how to fund this at a tipping point, and looking at opinions of female membership and leadership. Great comment, and something that is near and dear to my heart. So I might have some really great suggestions in terms of more creative ways later on, not just for females, but if that's something that you're kind of looking at, would be happy to chat a little bit more about that. Yes, Stu, great question about working with different groups. I think what I'll get to in a minute is trying to think about what's feasible in terms of what you're doing in evaluation, how many evaluations you can, or what, maybe you have one evaluation question, but you can ask the same questions to multiple different groups of people. Maybe you want to know what satisfaction is across your association, and you can get that from players, volunteers, and coaches, probably with the same method. Or again, maybe you have different questions for different stakeholder groups, and that's again maybe takes a little bit more capacity. But I think it's feasible in a lot of different ways. Yeah, and coach evaluation is great. And I mean, you guys, there's so much for coaches to like that are on their shoulders now. That they're the gateway to all these athletes. And again, between like concussion and injury prevention and rehab to life skill development, there's so many different things that you have to go take all these trainings for, and it's hard for coaches to do all of these things. So trying to think about retention of coaching and making sure they feel supported and whatnot, especially because they are often volunteers. So yeah, really great questions. And I won't get too much into like focus groups and interviews tonight, but again, a really neat way that you can just gain some feedback there. And then while being involved in that piece also builds that sense of belonging as well, because you kind of create these community of practices with other coaches or other kind of diverse groups within your setting as well. So just some considerations that I kind of alluded to a little bit, but thinking about what are the most important aspects of your program that you really want to be examining right now? Again, sometimes we think about, okay, I have 25 different questions that I want to ask, but I don't have capacity for all of this. So based on funding requirements, or what do we really want to know right now? And maybe you pick 1 or 2 questions to ask right now because that's what you have for evaluation capacity, and that's okay. So thinking about keeping that scope manageable so that you don't get overwhelmed and overburdened by all the data that you're collecting and whatnot. So in terms of survey, again, I know you guys do a lot of surveys in terms of membership, and it's the go-to method to gather information quite quickly from a large group, and it's great. So I don't have a lot of comments because I'm sure you guys do this really great. A few kind of suggestions that I have that I've kind of learned over the little bit of time is just making sure that your survey questions are aligned with evaluation. We know that people don't love filling out surveys, so ask your most important questions right at the beginning so that if you do get that dropout or drop off in response rates, you hopefully get those first few questions answered right away. Making sure that you're previewing or piloting your survey right before you administer, just for tiny little logistical things, but it's great even if you have one or two people go through and do it. Develop those clear and concise questions and then offer different formats. So my example before around, you know what, we do this end of year survey and we only get a 10% response rate. So are there different ways that you can do this? Okay, it's the end of the season. We have this huge event that we wrap up the season with. So let's print out all these hard copies that we can kind of hand out to people, or we have posters up with the QR codes. And then at the end, we'll send like an email with the QR code or the link again. And then there's different ways that you can gather information from people. And that way, if people weren't there, they don't miss out on the opportunity to give feedback. So a lot of just different ways to kind of think about those pieces. Thinking about being strategic about open-ended questions, they're super, super valuable. And I always encourage people that have your last question just be like, is there anything else you'd like to share or tell us or talk to us about your experiences? And you'll be very surprised what people put in there. And for the most part, it's, yeah, really great, whether it's positive or constructive, but it might be something that you hadn't really thought about, and it gives you really important information. So just having that open-ended text box at the end, but recognizing that you don't want to ask too many open-ended questions because that's when you'll get people to drop out. People are very happy to circle and check and click, but then when you want me to tell you all about my thoughts and feelings and reflections, they often just X and kind of complete or skip. So if you want to ask a couple questions, just thinking about what that is and be strategic about what those are. And then in terms of your answer choices, what I mean by that is like if you have on a scale from 1 to 5, thinking about making sure those choices are balanced. And what I mean by balance, and I'm happy to share slides afterwards, is just thinking about like, if you're asking about satisfaction, if you're asking about agreement, if you're asking about quality, these aren't the only ones. You can go on scales from 7 to 10 to whatnot. But just thinking about what that actually looks like, and that it's not, you have a very unlikely and a likely as your 5. So just making sure that if you have a very unlikely, you have another very on the other side of things so that they are balanced in that way. A conversation that I always get into with people, and there's no one right answer to do this, is to keep the neutral or remove a neutral, force people to make a decision. They're probably either satisfied or they're not satisfied. So if you're giving them a neutral, your people just go for the neutral. So if you want to force that out and do a 1 to 4 or a 1 to 6 scale and force them to tell you if they were actually happy or not, it's a good opportunity for you. And then one thing that I always recommend is just making sure that if you're doing a digital version, none of the responses are required, because from an ethics point of view, just be mindful that this is voluntary, and you don't want people to not feel comfortable answering one question and it forces them that they have to, and then they leave your survey because they're like, well, I don't really want to answer that question. So just making sure that they can leave things blank, or there's a prefer not to answer for things, especially demographic information and things like that. In alignment with that, just thinking about when you're doing a survey, those thinking about timing and considerations, and what that looks like. So again, if there's a big event at the end of the year that you can leverage, incentives are amazing. People love food. People love free stuff. People love swag. Again, we are planning a conference right now, and all the academics the other day was like, you like your orange slices and your popsicles at the end of the game when you were 5, and you know what, you still like food now. So giving that opportunity for free stuff goes a long way, especially if they have the opportunity to kind of give feedback. So popping up a booth to just get evaluation, having people come by, put music and things like that is a great opportunity to draw people in and get some feedback. And it doesn't have to be a survey necessarily, but that's one great way to be able to do that. Okay, I'm going to pause here because I saw Sophie's comment here. What's your opinion on gathering anonymous answers versus being able to reach out to the player? Great question. Great question. So I think it depends on what your evaluation question is. If it's like, I'm going back to, I can't remember, sorry, the name of the person that was talking at the beginning about kind of making like that pre-survey for athletes. If you're working in your team environment and it's more of a one-on-one, you're going to be using this feedback throughout a season, then I would say as long as the athlete is comfortable putting their name on that, then great, because they know what it's for. But that would be the big thing, is always educating and being open and honest about how their data is being used, how you're gathering this information, and who has access to it. But if it's on a larger scale than that, you could easily make ID codes through like people's date of births and stuff like that that doesn't require their name. And that way you can still track the people over time from pre to post and somewhere in between as well. But again, evaluation is different than research, but recognizing that the importance of anonymity and confidentiality is still very important as well. So a few things to think about as we kind of move beyond the survey. So often these, again, a lot of my research focuses on youth, but they can be used in different audiences as well, for sure. And I've targeted a few that are neat for like coaches and stuff like that as well. So it helps us when we think about surveys. They're really great for understanding what is actually happening. But we often know that there's typically low engagement and motivation levels, especially at youth. There could be language barriers or literacy level comprehension if you're asking certain questions that youth don't necessarily understand. So when we think about moving beyond the survey, using more qualitative tools, which means moving away from using numbers to using pictures, to using words, that can help understand and capture the why and the how a little bit more, and provides a great avenue to empower that youth, that athlete voice, or the coach perhaps, in those respects. So just highlighting that youth are very capable of communicating their experiences, and I think sometimes we underrepresent or underestimate how much they can actually share and absorb and be able to communicate, as long as we're doing it in kind of developmentally appropriate ways. So there's really great opportunities for creative and active methods. So we know that youth don't actually think like adults. So approaches like drawing, play, different activities, and reflection resonates with what the kids do on a day-to-day basis. So it aligns with them, and then allows for these more kind of creative methods to cater to people's experiences and interests. So again, doesn't just have to be for youth, but oftentimes can be in that respect as well. So why do we use these methods? We often hear, even, again, I said there's a barrier to evaluation is often time. And when I've done a lot of community engaged work, that's my biggest barrier is, you know what, we only have 60 minutes with these athletes once a week, and you're going to come in and take 15 minutes of my time to do a survey. So again, the digital age has allowed us to be flexible and be able to do things a lot more freely electronically, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people are then going to adhere to it, and when they're outside of that physical space, actually do it. So sometimes pulling two kids off to the side or two athletes off to the side at a time, so there's still, most of the team is engaged, and kind of bringing that up. It can also just double as a program activity, and you could make it like, if you guys are doing goal setting and kind of coming up with this season long plan for athlete development, that could be just, you know what, you come 30 minutes before, practice is an hour, it's now 90 minutes tonight, and this is what we're going to do for the first little bit of time. But it helps with that buy-in, right? It's fun, it's familiar, and yeah, hopefully it's helpful. And I don't know how many people are working with younger athletes, and I don't get into it too much tonight, but there's some really neat active methods that you can do, where you basically, like, if you're asking questions, you can, I know you guys will typically be in the middle of a field, but you could set up pylons and be like, okay, you read a statement, and kind of people run to different directions based on whether or not they agree or disagree with, if they're satisfied with this. Again, there's issues with that around like social desirability, and I'm going to follow what my friends thinking and doing and stuff like that. But it's still, again, if it's not, the stakes aren't high and the questions that you're asking aren't super personal, it's a great way to just get quick feedback. And even things like, what I asked you right at the beginning about you can do thumbs up, thumbs down on a scale from 1 to 5. People are giving you fingers in that respect. Again, if evaluation is for this quick learning focused lens, it gives you an opportunity for that quick feedback, that it doesn't have to be, I collect the survey, I go home, I analyze it, come back weeks later with a response. It could be like in the moment, quick feedback that you're getting from participants as well. So one of the neat things that we've done in the past is kind of doing a post-game interview. So people like to feel like they're famous, and you get in character. It could be a coach, it could be a volunteer, it could be a parent. And you know what? You grab a microphone and you can kind of ask all the questions that you want to ask. Pull somebody off to the side as they come off for a water break. And you know what was your favorite part of the game today? Or what did you learn today? Again, aligning with your evaluation questions, but making it fun, engaging. And people will tell you different ways of what did they learn? What did they take away? What can we do better next time, and things like that. So again, neat opportunity that we've done in the past and actually had really great feedback on getting feedback in that way. This one might be a little bit trickier for being in a field, but just thinking about, I know there's kind of different ways we've done it in a baseball diamond setting, and it's worked great. We've been able to hang poster boards and get feedback, and literally you could put anything at the center of a graffiti wall, and it could be something like, what's one thing that you learned? What would make this program better? What does being part of Rugby Ontario or one particular club mean to me? It could be, what's my favorite or least favorite activity? And people could just take a couple minutes, write whatever it is that they want. This could be done independently, but it could also be a group or a team approach. But it gets feedback to you guys quite quickly in a fun, engaging sort of way. And they're still kind of up, moving around. And again, this could be something where you did this. Sophie loved that you did this with her 30-year-olds. And again, that's the thing. People just like to be up and moving around. And again, you could have 4 different poster boards at different spots, and people are running from one to the next, or they have to do lunges from one to the next, or again, different fun things like that. Again, my perspective from a life skills learning perspective, debriefs at the end of a program, whether it's a practice or a game, are so important for learning. Coaches can get a lot of really great feedback at this point in terms of thinking about what did you like about the session? What did you learn? How did you feel? What should we work on next? From a life skills learning perspective, okay, we talked a lot about communication, teamwork, leadership today. How can we apply that beyond what we're learning, what we're doing in rugby? How can you apply that at school? How can you apply that in your community at home? And again, asking those questions, facilitating that discussion, depending on how big the team is. It could be small groups if you have multiple coaches or volunteers, or one big group. And again, we all have voice memos on our phone, and it's an easy thing to quickly record if you don't want to quickly jot down notes, and be able to reflect and learn from that later on down the line. We've done color by question a few times. This was something that was really leveraged a lot, again, particularly with youth, but even individuals who are living with like a developmental or a learning disability. But you leveraged a lot during COVID when we had transitioned to kind of online platforms. And this is where, again, your questions could be anything, and you could pick whatever coloring page it is that you wanted. And it could be, again, example here is a bunch of different sport equipment. So your tennis ball is, I learned new rugby skills at this. And if they agree, they would color it green. Okay, you know what? The racket is, I ask others for help when I need it. Okay, they feel comfortable doing that. Yes, no, sometimes. And again, and you can make this, the flexibility of all of these methods are really, really great. You can tailor it to what you want to learn, what you want to know, and what that is feasible for you in practice. And again, relevance in terms of making this a rugby coloring page and things like that. And again, this is it kind of in practice with a basketball organization. They did a Mickey coloring page, and each piece of Mickey was tailored to a particular evaluation question that they had. Another one that I've done quite a bit has been amazing and extremely meaningful. It takes a little bit more time and energy, but and we've done something like this from the coach perspective. So this is a digital story, and this is a short personal tale told from the heart. So it's a participant led. It could be the participant provides video, photos, images, text, audio recorded. Some people have done poetry, music, different things like that. And it could be again, and I'll post a couple of these really quickly in the chat so that you guys have them. I'm just gonna quickly get them for you so that we have them, because I don't want to lose them. But we have done them, and they are extremely meaningful and impactful. And again, these can be something that are then used for promotion, for programming. If you're trying to recruit coaches, if you're trying to recruit athletes, it's a really great opportunity. So just sharing two from coach perspectives there, but they're really great. They're very powerful. And again, depending on capacity, can be supported in different opportunities. But we did these with Canada Games coaches when it was held at Brock a couple of years ago, and we did it on women in leadership positions. So yeah, really great, really meaningful. So when you get a chance, have a quick peek at those. And I don't know if those will be lost when this is over. So Jocelyn, if you're okay to save them and link them out, they're great too. Thank you. Another one is timelining. So this could be, again, anything that you wanted it to be. It could be you set a prompt for a coach or for an athlete that imagine you had to just thinking. Imagine you had to create a short story or a film about your athletic experiences or your coaching experience. Go back to where it all began. What event shaped who you are today? What would this look like? Again, it could be for older athletes transitioning, but it allows them an opportunity. And then from there, you can have a conversation with them. And this could be for the season. It could be for their career. It could be for whatever. Maybe they experience an injury in the season and kind of talking about what that looks like. And then this is where you can foster a conversation or an interview around some of these, kind of using the timeline as a prompt or a facilitator for that conversation. Personal media map is something that I've also done quite a bit. And essentially, again, a lot of flexibility here. It's similar to our kind of graffiti wall or mind maps that were, but more individual. So we've done it with Canadian Girls Baseball, which is a youth-led, or sorry, a women-led, women-run girls baseball organization that's run across Canada. And we essentially put, what does being part of Canadian Girls Baseball mean to me? And we got some really great responses. About what it means to be part of this girls only context and the influence of gender in a male dominated sport. And yeah, the flexibility of what it looks like for an athlete or for whoever fills this out. They could write, they could draw, they could use this, they can complete it digitally. So again, you see two different examples here, and really great feedback. If they feel more comfortable with words, they can put words. If they want to draw, they can draw. So maybe I'll hit pause there just for a minute. Does anybody have any questions about any of the examples or methods so far? And I know I went through them quite quickly, and I'd love to just spend a whole session on every single one of these. So happy if people do have more questions to follow up. I'll provide my email at the end, and happy to do that. If people don't have questions, that's okay. I then have a question for you guys, which is if you're thinking about any of these, do you feel like one of these methods could be used moving forward within to kind of guide or be used as part of your evaluation practices moving forward? Do you think about any of these as something that could potentially fit within some of your work? Yes. Okay, great, Stu. Glad to hear the accommodation. Yeah, for the field-based feedback, it is hard to do chart paper for sure. And that's where like the debrief is really great to just, you're likely going to do it regardless. So taking some time to add in a few quote unquote evaluation questions there. The post-game interviews, yeah, they're fun. They're again, they're great too. And again, you could voice memo them. You could turn that into promotional videos, right? Or social media clips and stuff like that. Great. So yeah, seeing the post-game interviews a few times, timelining, graffiti wall, that's great. Okay, so yeah, hopefully a few of those are helpful for you. So, sorry, just a question there. Don already using the end of session debrief, so that's great. Yeah, doing the post-game interviews. Try it out, see what it's like for a coaches meeting to get to know each other. Oh, good. Okay, a collective resume. I love that. Leanne, if you have capacity, can you unmute yourself and share a little bit just for the others so they can learn? Because I'd love to hear a little bit more about the collective resume too.
Yeah, sure. So this year we put out a post on social media to engage additional coaches, both volunteers and possibly having some paid coaches. We had a director of rugby and head coach of the women and the juniors who went back to New Zealand. So we have big gaps because he was a real club person and did a lot of extra stuff. So from the coaching perspective, we had about 18 to 20 different individuals, different like different ages, different rugby abilities, no managers in this group because that's a different group that we work with, and all that would be coaching in sort of like U14 to U18. So yeah, we brought them together at a pub. We had a little bit of charcuterie. It cost maybe $30 for the charcuterie, and then everybody got their first beer for free. And we broke them up into groups and had them chat with one another, answering a series of like 6 questions each, like in each group, to talk about their rugby experience. The questions were like, what is your purpose? Why are you here? What do you want to, get out of this season? And then we put the collective resume up on the walls, and just talk through it as a group, and just to understand that we were basically all on the same page and going the same direction, but they're people they'd never met before in some cases. Some were youth coming back, well, former youth that are now like 28 or so, coming back to give back. Others were the parents of youth in our program. Like, it was just a really beautiful coming together of connection and commonality. And it worked really well.
No, that's fabulous. Great for sharing, or thank you for sharing. And it's great to hear, like, that could be something we often focus on goal setting from an athlete perspective. So it allows kind of a starting point too from the coach perspective to see, why are you here? What are those goals? And again, it's going to help with retention of your coaching staff if you actually are mindful and care about those things and are focusing on those. And what can we do as an association or to be able to support these coaches? If they want more training, can we get them in this workshop or this training, or they want to develop X, Y, and Z? Can we support them in that? And that will then, again, help with retention and but also quality coaching, right? So that's great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Leanne. So I think just to start wrapping up, to allow some time for questions at the end, recognize that important. And I think Dawn kind of highlighted it from the beginning when I asked the question, like, what's something that you really want to learn that you're not actually doing right now? And that's thinking, that notion of evaluative thinking. So you reflect on how you're doing evaluation, why you're doing an evaluation. And it really does kind of help keep you accountable to the questions that you ask, the activities that you do. You know what? We do this survey every single year and no one ever looks at it. We just gather it all on SurveyMonkey or on Google Forms, and nobody ever analyzes the data or whatnot. It's like, okay, well, why are we doing this? What questions do we actually want to ask? And what do we want to learn? And you know what? Let's hit pause and rejig our survey, or reimagine what that's going to look like and what we're actually going to do with that data. So in order to do that at an organizational level, and it's great to hear about people doing kind of more strategic planning. So if you don't have an evaluation team, try and leverage one at more the admin level. It can be 3 or 4 people. It could be 2 people. Again, I know all different organizations are different in sizing, but it helps to just, again, set the stage so that evaluation isn't an afterthought, and thinking about, what is the purpose for evaluating our programming? What data do we already collect? What's the quality? How effective? And what can that actually look like? And part of that could be, we're using the timeline, we're using a collective resume, we're using a letter to our younger self, which I didn't talk about too much tonight, but thinking about, if I went back 20 years, what would I want to tell myself or reflect on? And those pieces can also evoke that evaluative thinking. And sometimes what I would recommend is that sometimes less is more. Simply knowing how and doing evaluation is one piece of the puzzle. So then when we can kind of have that critical approach to, okay, now we do evaluation, but let's make sure we're doing a quality evaluation. This is where that notion of evaluative thinking comes into play and is so, so important. So the importance of kind of key takeaways here that I would highlight is thinking about, it comes down to capacity a lot of the time. So reflecting on what data do we already collect, and do we need to? Everybody collects, has intake forms, registration forms. The demographics of your participants. What have those same demographic information year after year after year. That can tell you a lot of information about retention, and even collecting something like somebody's postal code. You can find out, this person drives 45 minutes to our programming every single night. And that's really interesting. Why is that happening? And figuring all of those information, that's really important, valuable data that you probably already have without actually having to go out and collect any more data. Because you already have it in the registration and intake forms. So just hitting pause there, and maybe we don't have to do any sort of new evaluation. We can just ask questions based off the data that we have. And this is something that's important to think about and consider when your evaluation capacity is low. Start small. This is the data we already have. Let's see what questions we can ask and get answered based off what we're already collecting. And again, starting small, doing what's feasible. Again, thinking about, can we integrate with what we're already doing rather than add on this brand new thing? So we already do this survey. Could we add on 1 or 2 more questions to get at another angle of our evaluation that we're thinking about? Again, highlighting the importance of getting at those program delivery, the program processes, making sure that people are satisfied, making sure quality programming, that you're implementing your programming as intended. Those are all super, super important, beyond just, are we getting those outcomes that we want in terms of developmental, physical developmental outcomes. And then for my perspective, recognizing the importance of that athlete and coach voice and their engagement in this. And again, when you think about an evaluation team, I'm thinking pie in the sky here of how amazing it is to actually have an evaluation team. And maybe that's 2 or 3 individuals. Could you get an athlete on that? Could you get a coach on that as a way to, what's actually feasible on the ground, and get their feedback on as part of the team? Sorry, Stu, I just saw your question. Okay, yeah, long-term survey data management. Amazing that you have it. And yes, if you can gather that in a digital way, amazing. If you have to go pen and paper, that's fine too. And I would just recommend that you're then importing that and managing the data in a digital platform so that you have everything backed up. I'm happy to, in the Q&A, chat a little bit more about what that looks like. But obviously a digital platform is great. If you want to know specifics about platforms, I can definitely make some recommendations. But I mean, Google Forms and Microsoft, I think it's Microsoft Forms, is really great too in terms of their capabilities. And often most of those are free. But yeah, we can chat a little bit more in the Q&A just so that I know exactly what your question is and can try and answer it the best way I can. And then, as I mentioned right from the outset, leveraging those community collaborations and resources. It could be human resources like connecting with a university or college. It could be financial resources in terms of grant and evaluation expert, and a few kind of things that I'll highlight here. Again, if you're focused on youth, YouthRex has an amazing repository of if you're looking at particular outcomes that you want to measure, they have a great platform there, and I'm happy to send that link as well. If you're looking for an actual evaluator to support, Canadian Evaluation Society has, so I have a designation of being a credentialed evaluator, which means Canadian Evaluation Society has deemed us to be experts in that field. So that's why I have like the CE at the end of my kind of email signature and things like that. There's a list of all of those people within Ontario that have that credentialed evaluator that you could connect with and see if they'd be willing to kind of support in that way. And again, when you're applying for grants, I would advocate for you putting in a little bit of time, financial resources to be able to support evaluation, and then you have the money, which is often a barrier to be able to undertake some sort of evaluation in that respect. CIRC, if you're not familiar with CIRC, that's the Sport Information Resource Center. They are an amazing platform in terms of all open access resources that are all evidence informed, coming from any kind of topic in sport. So if you don't know and aren't familiar with them, dive into them regardless of evaluation. But they also have a great toolkit that has a lot of really great resources and great starting points there as well. And then, as I mentioned, I'm through the Center for Healthy Youth Development through Sport at Brock, and we do, again, our mandate is very applied in terms of working to build capacity and create sport, again, at the youth level of quality, and that we're supporting that healthy development. So a lot of the work that we do is community engaged in that respect as well. So I'll pause there. This is another little evaluation tool that you can very quickly use to get feedback. It could be at a workshop, it could be at a training, it could be with your athletes if you have a nutritionist come and give a talk to your club or something like that. And it could be your head, your heart, your feet. So your head is what's something that you have learned from whatever it is that you're talking about. Heart is something that you liked about tonight's session. And then feet is how do you actually plan to apply what you've learned into practice, into your daily life. And again, this could be done individually, one-on-one with a piece of paper. It could also be done, I've done it, a really fun time. I did it with Golf Canada at one of their workshops, and I actually drew a golfer with my amazing artistic ability, and this isn't it, but we gave sticky notes. So this one doesn't have the colored sticky notes, but we did 3 different colors, so your head, your heart, your feet, and people filled it out at the end of the session, and then they went and they put it at the head, the heart, and the feet. And it could be that, and then they leave and that's it, or it could also be, you know what, let's sit and debrief and look at, okay, what are the common themes that people talked about in terms of head? What are the common themes that talked about what people loved about the session, or that notion of application? So all of those things are really, really valuable and worthwhile to kind of have that opportunity for further reflection and debriefing in that respect. Sorry, Stu, I saw that. Yeah, measuring matters. Head is data helps drive passion. Apply. I love it. Let's ask. Yeah, I love that mindset. And yeah, absolutely great ways. And you can, again, the flexibility of all the methods that I talked about tonight are that you can tweak them in any way that you feel that fits your evaluation needs. So again, just to wrap up, evaluation allows you to do what you're already doing, but just a little bit better, or a lot better, depending on where you're at. So yeah, happy to loop in some questions here. Before I dive into that, I want to give a shameless plug that our research center is offering a youth sports summit on May 12th, and it's at Brock University. We are a very, very applied. This is an applied conference in terms of we're really encouraging presentations from people in the community, whether that's sport admins, whether that's coaches. We've had physical educators come and present. We've had coaches. We have people from like the GTHL, Greater Toronto Hockey League, coming to give presentations. So whether that's a best practice, whether that's a new initiative that you want to share, all different things. I think it would be great. I know Jocelyn mentioned the club share and tell. If there's people that have done that and they want to share something, it could be a poster, it could be a presentation. Again, we're really trying to move away, and it has been in previous years that I work really hard to make this an applied learning event and great networking opportunities. So if you are interested in attending and or presenting, please, you can scan the QR code. I'll also share all the information with Jocelyn as well, and she can provide that as well. Amazing, thank you. And there's my contact info just in case people do have any questions and want to reach out. You're welcome to do that as well. So yeah, Jocelyn, thanks again for having me, and thanks for everyone's involvement tonight. And I'll hit pause and open the floor to questions here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Corliss. Lots for everyone to think about, I'm sure. I know I was taking notes as we go, as we were going. So yeah, we'll open the floor. Questions you can put in the chat, or it might actually be easier at this point if you want to just unmute and share. We can get a bit of a discussion going.
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay,
Yeah.
I see Jocelyn nodding. Great. I'm curious because you indicate that everybody in general is positive about evaluation. What are some of the roadblocks that you run into with organizations when it comes to introducing new forms of evaluation or standardizing it across the different teams?
Yeah, great question. I mean, roadblocks oftentimes are time. So whether that's capacity, it could be the financial piece, it could just be I don't even understand and know where to start with evaluation. So I think if maybe what you're alluding to is at the admin level, you want to engage in evaluation, you're trying to kind of infiltrate it across an organization. My biggest ask is to kind of you make it a team approach that they understand and are fully informed why you're engaging in evaluation and how and what the benefits are. Again, from like a very quick youth perspective, in terms of evaluation, one very easy way to show that is you show them you tell them by showing. They provide some insight and some feedback to you, and from there you're able to actually make those changes and see, okay, here's the feedback that we got, these are the changes that we made based off of that. And again, my example from a youth perspective is, you know what, I really like the snacks that you bring to this program. Or you know what, it's super simple, you know what, then I'm going to keep bringing those granola bars every week because they get you in the door, they keep you here. Or it just shows that, you know what, they're listening to my voice. So making sure that, again, the trickle down effect of encouraging buy-in is that you're making sure that people's voices are heard and respected, I think is really critical. And then just making sure that, again, people understand why they're engaging in evaluation and what that looks like for them. And again, taking on that learning focus lens is super valuable. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Stu.
Hey, yeah, thanks very much for spending your time tonight. I really appreciate it. I had a question, I'm wondering what you think about when you get a lot of negative feedback, or to borrow an analogy from another sport, when somebody rags the puck, when somebody is saying, very negative things, or really maybe not very positive things. From your perspective, do you see that in data? Do you see that in research? Can you, sort of error it out? Or how, do you have any ideas about when we go to seek input from our members, sometimes people are kind of cranky, right? What are your thoughts on that? How do you deal with that?
Yep, really good question. Yeah.
Asking, questions.
Yeah, and I definitely see it. And I mean, we've done some surveys with like provincial sport organizations, and this maybe goes on the flip side of things where I say people don't like to answer open-ended questions. If they have something negative to say, they will type, 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 type. And we were analyzing this data, and it's like half pages of just like venting and sharing and stuff like that. So again, I think from their perspective, they want their voice heard and acknowledged, and I think that's important. I think recognizing that is the negative feedback or the constructive feedback that you're receiving a trend? Is it just one angry parent that kind of keeps saying the same thing over and over again, or is it, again, are you seeing a trend, and then maybe it's something worth investigating? Not that if it's just one, it's not, but I think, again, it depends on whether or not your data is anonymous or not. But is it worthwhile to have a sit down with that one individual and see, what can we do here? Again, from a parent perspective, we often know that people are investing lots of time and lots of money into, so the pressure and the stakes are quite high. And if they're not getting their return on investment, or they're personally invested in living through their child, and all of those sorts of back end motivations for why this is happening, I think is important to acknowledge and provide context. But I think the way you frame questions is a way to get around that, and how you're actually asking the questions and how you're getting feedback. But then again, I think if you're getting a kind of a trend of there's a lot of constructive feedback, then maybe it's something we need to look into in terms of delivery and whatnot.
So, follow-on question. Do you, in your research, the way that you're looking at data and community engagement, do you see trends or differentiations between age groups? So, like, parents of U6, U8, U10 respond a certain way versus parents of U16, U18, or adults or more mature players, they respond in certain ways. Do you, from your perspective, are you seeing differentiations in the way that parts of the community respond to your inquiry?
Absolutely. And I think that gives like a very interesting way that you could already have the data, and you're just now asking a different question, right? You're asking a different question of, what are the, like, you could look across gender, right? And see and understand that it could be your veteran players versus your novice players. It could be, as you said, based on the age groups. People's goals and motivations and aspirations as you get older, and depending on what level you're at are competing, you're going to see different trends there. So that might be maybe your membership survey or your year-end survey. Maybe you have tailored questions based off of I know that maybe adds a little bit layer of complexity, but they hit a drop-down menu of, okay, what child or what age group is your child part of? Okay, U6. Okay, here are a couple extra questions. Maybe it's, again, the same survey, same 20 questions you want to ask, and then maybe there's one or two more for particular age groups that you might want to ask. And it sounds like it's complicated, but it's on the back end of creating a survey. It's not that much. And again,
branching logic is a certain
there you go. You already got the language, so you got it. But yes, I think so. And again, it's when you take on that kind of like evaluative thinking lens, that maybe you already have data and you can just look at it from different perspectives and look at different themes across different age groups, different genders, your paid coaches versus what your volunteer coaches, and are there different kind of themes that are coming out that way. Thanks for the question, Stu.
Corliss, I'll jump in with a question, and this a little bit builds on Stu's point, I think. But rugby's a smaller sport, right? We're trying to grow, and so one of the challenges we face is how do we get feedback from those that aren't in our programs yet as to why they're not in our programs yet. So we can't necessarily evaluate because they aren't actually in our programs, but we, instead of asking the group that are already engaged and we know they're enjoying it because they're here and they're coming back, how do we address that challenge?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I would say seeing it on that side, I often see it on the dropout side, right? You have people in these programs, they leave, and you're like, why did you leave? And we can never actually get feedback on why aren't you here anymore? What made you kind of disengage with the sport, or the organization and whatnot. So I think go beyond your organization, your programming. Can you get into schools? Can you go to a community event and set up I know like Parks and Rec Ontario does really great events. If you, again, that's more recreation, but I'm sure there's other organizations that we'll probably think of later later tonight. But different events in the community that you can set up a booth. I know in our, like, I'm in Markham, and we have really great um like Main Street Markham festivals and stuff like that. That you set up a booth there for a couple hours, and you know what? It just brings awareness to, oh, I didn't know there's a club within Markham that I could sign up for, or oh, I thought I was too old to start this. You know what I mean? Like, I think it just brings that visibility to your provincial sport organization, to different clubs that are within the area. And again, you could ask a couple kids in your club to be the ones that go, you know what I mean, in terms of give them their volunteer hours for the 2 or 3 hours they're sitting there, provide some insight, give some pamphlets, and be able to do it in that way. And then hopefully you're building the game and building awareness at the same time.
Awesome. I love that. Anybody else? We have a few more minutes with Corliss if you have other burning questions.
Yeah, I'll jump in with kind of a little twist of a question, perhaps. It's kind of with regard to kind of evaluation. Some of the key stakeholders for any club, right, when it comes to funding, is some of the club sponsors. Um, I guess a question around value associated not only internally going through the process of evaluation, but going to some of the sponsors and looking for them to evaluate that partnership or that sponsorship. If there's any work you've done in that area, and if you've seen any positive outcomes towards it.
I haven't at all, probably just because
Mm-hmm.
that kind of goes beyond my scope of expertise related to
Mm-hmm.
that. We have our sport management department, which is really strong in that respect. But I mean, if again, they're investing so much money, so why would they not want to evaluate the partnership or the return on
Mm-hmm.
investment in that way? So again, that might be, and I even encourage this with like funders and stuff like that, is like sit down and have a 30-minute chat of like, you know what? Let me contextualize our association for you a little bit more and kind of tell you what's
Mm-hmm.
important to us. And I think having those conversations from the outset, hearing what your donors, your sponsors, are interested in wanting to know, and what that looks like for them, and then you can gather that data and that information for them, whether it's like through website analytics, whether it's through, you know what, a QR code. There are wonderful things that you can create, back end QR codes of, oh, where did they scan that? Oh, that was at the Markham Festival versus that was at
Mm-hmm.
this event, that event, you know what I mean, and kind of understand where people are learning about, and kind of growing in that respect, if that helps. But sorry, I'm not an expert in that area.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for kind of some of the insight there. And I guess one other thought I have is around other sources of funding and using evaluation of a tool uh, to be able to kind of drive other revenue sources for the club. And for example, with the grants you kind of referenced, I guess what are the major grants out there that are available to different clubs that operate in Ontario that are nonprofits and sport organizations?
Yeah, great thought. So Jumpstart is kind of the
Hmm.
go-to. They
Yeah.
have a lot of great funding opportunities there, and they have community grants in that respect as well. I know if you're thinking like different initiatives and stuff like that, like maybe more smaller scale things, MLSE Launchpad, so Maple Leaf Sports and
Hmm.
Entertainment, they have a lot of neat, I don't know if those are called community grants too, but I know they target kind of equity deserving groups quite often, in terms of under-resourced neighborhoods, or people of different ethnicities and things like that. So that could be like a new, if you're looking to grow the game, offering a program to a new population, stuff like that. CIRC, also the Sport Information Resource Center, they often have these like
Hmm.
partnership grants where you can connect with a researcher and you partner for, I I'd have to double check the amount. Maybe it's like $10,000 or $15,000, and you kind of put together a proposal. And kind of do that. If you're looking at something a little bit larger scale, and again with a research or evaluation lens to it, again, if you find a researcher that's similar to myself, or Carl, I know Erickson was on here a couple of weeks ago. There's grants at the Canadian government and the Ontario government that offer really, really great things to support. And again, a lot of my work is evaluation. It's less research than it is evaluation. It informs the research that we do, but it's partnering with a community organization. And then from there, we develop this evaluation plan and can kind of carry that out. So SHRC is the acronym there. It's this I'll just pop it in there, but you can Google it, and they have like small grants and larger grants as kind of with larger amounts of money, but like a 1 year $25,000 grant up to like a 5-year big grant.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, Rob mentioned there that there's a Rugby Ontario has a grant information resource, which is great. So thanks, Rob, for sharing that.
Yeah, I'll stick that link in the chat because it's not publicly on our website right now. We're trying to figure out the best way to share it, but I'll put that in here. And if you're watching the recording later or you lose this, reach out, email. We're happy to connect with you. It's a tricky time of year too, because some of these will now be passed and there may be new ones coming up. This is heavy grant time for sure. But we try and stay on top of it as best we can. Final thoughts or questions?
Just a quick thought. I think kids sport also does some funding, but I think it might be more like at the individual child level. Yeah, that was the only other one that I kind of thought of.
Individual child, that one as well, but another good one to look at.
And Canadian women in sport. If your target population is obviously women or girls, they do some pockets of money as well. Thanks, Leanne. Appreciate the feedback and appreciate your time.
Okay, maybe just final thoughts, Corliss, on kind of the next step going forward. So we're doing evaluation, we've done some evaluation. How do we make sure that we're not just doing it? Like, what are we doing with the information afterwards, right? How do we make sure that we're using that, implementing it, and adapting moving forward?
Yeah, I think that notion of evaluative thinking, that you're always asking, like, why are we doing this? Do we have the capacity, and what does that look like? Again, thinking about what are those questions we want to ask that we're not asking right now, and getting answers to those. So when you're out for a dog walk a little bit later in the next couple of weeks, something might pop for you. But yeah, just kind of thinking about that. And I know oftentimes within smaller organizations too, that it often falls on one person and one person only. So if you can leverage a small evaluation team so that it is kind of this team approach, and you're really using that learning focused lens, that will help. Again, we kind of try and weave it into the fabric of your organization, right? So that again, you're what are you using the data for? How are you actually applying it? And so people can actually see the changes that you're making. That it's not just, oh, I fill out the same survey every year and nothing ever changes. It's, okay, let me show you. And maybe you're using your social media, or you're using like a 2-page infographic or something like that to like highlight, you know what, thanks for you're completing the membership survey. Here's what we heard from you guys. And this is what we learned. And this is what we're doing to kind of like better meet the needs of your stakeholders. Great thinking, Stu. That would be amazing. And there are some really great templates online if you were interested in kind of doing that. But it would be good to have like a Rugby Ontario focused one.
All right. Yeah, so Stu, I'll come back to your question in a sec here. But I just put the link in for our survey, our exit survey for this. So yeah, please take a few minutes. I do read all of the answers in this, and we come back to them as we think about planning future iterations of these sessions. So yeah, anything that can help us, please put it in there. We try and make it as simple as possible for you to respond. So yeah, if you can take a quick second for that. We'll also put it in your email, and the recording of this will be out. We'll link it through there. So on that note, reminder that the recording will be posted to the virtual portal. So it'll be through that Feedloop portal. You'll have access to that basically for as long as it lives there, which I think is forever. Who knows? And then it'll move over to our YouTube page. So it'll be more publicly accessible as well. But you'll have first access on the virtual portal. Coming up next will be our registration for our third Club Dev session. So that's going to be in 2 weeks on March 9th. The topic for that one, we're back on the coach focus for that one. So we're going to have a panel. We've got a panel of 4 coaches: Sheldon Persad, Corey Hector, Leanne Naprakowski, and Kevin Julian. And they'll be sharing around their successes and challenges in coaching. So stay tuned for registration coming for that. We hope to see you all there. And if you are looking for more Club Dev support, so Stu, your comment about templates for planning, if you're kind of thinking about some of this and you're looking for more support, Corliss, I'm sure you've got her email, you can reach out to her for some things. But we do also have our rugby development consultants. We've got 2 back this year. They're available to support all the clubs. They have bi-weekly office hours starting this Wednesday. So Mark from 6 to 7 and Liz from 7 to 8. And their focus is around project management for Mark, and then strategic planning and governance for Liz. They both have a fair amount of knowledge kind of beyond that scope and are happy to help direct you and help you kind of solve whatever problems you have or work through ideas that you have. So there's more information on the website. I'll put the link in there as well. And you, if you're an exec at your club, you should have gotten an email about that as well. So signups are there, and we'll update the signups for each one of their sessions as we go. If you have any questions about any of that, as always, feel free to reach out to me. And I think that is all we had. So thanks, everyone. Really great session tonight. Thanks, Corliss, so much for joining us, everyone, for all your questions and your participation throughout the event. And we look forward to more work moving forward. Have a great
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.